Welcome back. Well, what you were seeing right there was a great presentation done by the Orange County Fire Authority about their graduating class, their current one, class 43. And with us right now, we have Captain Larry Kurtz, who's the Public Information Officer with OCFA, and we have their nurse educator, Jane Lambert. And Larry, always good to see you. Jane,
Thanks for having us back.
Nice to meet you as well.
Really appreciate you both coming on. We're still seeing some of these names going by here. The Academy, we've been up there a while back, a couple years ago, kind of watched them training. Tell us how this program works, how long is it, and where do you find these guys and women as well? Yeah,
right, there are men and women in the program,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Academy lasts for 4 months. The firefighters are trained at our headquarters. We have our own training tower, which we can actually set on fire. We have smoke,
Yes.
we have car fire, simulated props. We have a back area where we have junked cars from previous collisions that they can work on using the jaws of life. The Academy is a time for them to learn the basics of firefighting operations and in the process become more physically fit. We teach them fitness, we teach them nutrition, and we teach them survival techniques in the fire. Going into a burning building is not a natural act,
right.
And we try and train them as well as we can to be able to come back out of the burning building. These firefighters are tremendous people. They go through a very intensive process. The hiring process for firefighters is, to say the least, competitive. There are thousands upon thousands of applicants for very, very few jobs, and so we get to pick the cream of the crop from these fine men and women. We find them from other agencies, other fire agencies. We find them from ex-military. But we also find them from the people who are packing groceries at your local supermarket. We find them in construction jobs. We find them mowing people's lawns. We find them in the education division. When
So
they
really
sit down and they
all
talk to us,
Yeah.
and we begin to talk to them, we find out about their life story and who and what they're about. And there's just that's something, there's a commonality. We look at it and we think, yes, yeah, you're the person we want to work with. Then we offer them the program. They have to go through a background investigation.
Sure.
And in the Academy, not everyone makes it out. We do have a certain dropout rate, but the ones that do make it are the newest members of our agency. They will go through a 1-year probationary period at a fire station. And at the end of the year, they take another examination to see if their skills are still holding and they're increasing their knowledge. And they begin a 25 to 30-year career in the agency. Now, a lot of these firefighters are also, as I mentioned, from other agencies, but they are also, many of them are paramedics already with our organization, which is where Jane comes in.
That's right. So Jane, as the nurse educator, you teach the paramedics, right? You teach that
correct.
side of it. Would that mean, I think I might have asked you this before, but I forgot the answer. The firefighters who are going through this program, we're talking about the Academy here, are they getting some paramedic training as well? Because I know that's a separate certified branch, so to speak, of it. Am I right?
That is correct.
Okay.
But as far as the Academy, they're getting medical training,
Okay.
not necessarily at the paramedic level,
Okay.
at the basic, what they call an EMT, which is an emergency medical technician level.
Okay.
So they learn all of our equipment that they carry. They go through CPR training, so we basically renew their skills that they
Okay,
need.
so you're teaching both some of the Academy here, but you teach the
correct.
paramedics as well.
That
you
is
take them
correct.
through that. How long is that program, by the way?
That program, they get training 24 hours every 2 years. Sometimes
Okay.
it can go up to 30. So we do 3-hour training classes quarterly. But it takes us about 150 classes of the same thing to get
Wow.
through the department, because we have over 1,000
That's
individuals
amazing.
in our department. Yes.
And the initial training to become a paramedic, how does a firefighter say, I want to get in on this training, I want to be a paramedic as well? Is it an application process? Do they just say, I want to go to these classes? How does that work?
Yes, through our department, we offer them to go to paramedic school, and it is an application process. They put in an application. Once the application is approved, then they go through testing, and they have to do a written test, and they have to do skill testing, and they go through an interview. So it is quite a process.
And I know it's ongoing to keep your certification, as you were saying.
That is correct.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
that is correct.
now, as far as your background goes, in the medical field for many years
Absolutely,
as a nurse?
yes. I was a nurse down at Mission Hospital
Oh, you
in
were?
Mission Viejo for 20 years
Wow.
in the emergency room. We have 7 nurse educators, and most of the nurses have either their emergency room experience and or critical care experience.
And how did you get into this aspect of it?
Well, actually, I was approached, I was working in the ER, and I was approached by a previous educator to say, hey, would you like to be an educator for the Orange County Fire Authority? And I thought that would be a great transition.
Yeah.
And so
We know how to identify talent.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So are you with them full time, or you still work
Yes,
at Mission?
no,
Okay.
I quit Mission and I joined the department full time.
Wow.
So it is a full time position.
Yeah, especially when you're doing both the, we're looking at some old pictures here, but when you're doing both the academy and
Correct.
the paramedics. Now,
Correct.
Larry sent us some photos here, and this goes way back, doesn't
This
it?
goes way back.
Way back.
This is kind of the history of, paramedicine is what the term is.
Yeah.
But paramedics, emergency care, but from the horse and buggy, from just picking up people off the streets and
Yeah.
loading them in a horse and buggy and taking them to an ambulance or taking them to the hospital.
I'm glad you brought these along, because many years ago now, it almost seemed very separated. You had the fire department. If they needed to transport somebody, you still have the local ambulance, care ambulance and all that, but it was totally a separate thing. And when they did get into the ambulance, quite often they were ambulance drivers. Maybe they knew some very basic stuff, but that was it, right? Long before paramedics.
That is correct.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's still true today. The ambulance drivers, a lot of them are just EMTs, which is basic emergency medical services.
Yes.
And then you have the paramedic, which is advanced medical services. So they have the drugs, they have the cardiac monitors, so they can do a lot more care. for the
Yeah, so a
patient.
lot different than where it used to be. Then we had Squad 51 come on the show emergencies,
Yes, actually,
and it
that's the
changed
next
everything.
slide coming
Yeah.
up.
I don't know if your technicians get the next
No,
slide.
but
Yeah.
you know what? It was really interesting, because that's where people, that TV show, first learned about paramedics.
You're absolutely
and,
right. There we
It
go.
was done by, I didn't even, honestly, did not even know they had this. Richard Tague, all those people. But what was really interesting about this is, I know where that station is, as a matter of fact. It's up in El Segundo, right?
El Segundo, absolutely correct.
And by the way, if you go to Universal Studios, their fire department is
Station 51.
51. But what was so good about this, it really introduced people to something they had never heard of before. It was a great show, but it was really an educational show, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Emergency One show was really the fire department version of Adam 12. If
Yeah, it was.
those of
Same
you who go back,
producers, yeah.
They played it very straight up.
Yeah, they
very.
did.
This is what we do. And when you talk about the separation of fire and EMS in today's agencies, back on the East Coast, that's still very prevalent.
Right.
For example, FDNY. Their medical services are often run by their police department through the ESU
Really?
system.
Wow.
Yes, that's very odd. They look at us on the West Coast and they say, well, the fire service does medical calls? That sounds ridiculous. And we
Yeah.
look at them and we say, the police department does EMS calls? That's ridiculous. So it depends on where you are in the country. But this really introduced people to the idea that that a fire agency could also function as an emergency medical provider. And it's people like Jane who train us, who give us the skills that we need to go out there and make sure that we keep current with emergency medicine. Emergency medicine is in constant state of change. There's always new techniques, new technologies, new equipment. And part of her job, and she works tirelessly at this to make sure that we are up to date, to make sure that we're out there giving you the best service that we possibly can from our organization.
Yeah, and if people maybe recall the show, the communications they had back then were modems, basically. They had a very, obviously, at the time, it was state of the art, but they would transport, their vitals and through a kind of a big, huge phone thing and stick it down, but that was all based on truth.
Yes.
That's what's so cool about that.
Interesting thing is the Squad 51 vehicle from the TV show. It is in Washington D.C. at the Smithsonian Institute.
Is it really?
Yes, it is
Wow.
there. Yeah. They kept it's such a well-recognized national icon. I think it's right next to the Star Trek spaceship.
Yeah. But I did not realize that throughout the country people don't have this paramedic type program.
Not everybody does. No.
Yeah, it's mainly West Coast.
It's mainly West Coast, but many city centers and civic centers have this. You know, they're starting to adopt the idea, and it's gained traction more and more over the years.
There's 22.
So we'll go with today.
Yes.
You know, Station 22. I'm sure many of your viewers are very familiar seeing this going up and down the streets
Right.
of Laguna Woods.
Yeah. And today, when there is a call that comes out, and do you send both the truck and engine if it's just a medical call? Does everyone go out?
When we receive a call for a medical service based call, what we will send is the closest, what we call advanced life support unit, which is the closest paramedic. If the closest fire unit happens to be just what we call a basic life support unit, one that does not have paramedics on it, we will send that unit and the next closest unit. Because sometimes we get a lot of questions about people saying, you know, why are there 2 fire engines at this one call? Well, the closest fire engine may have EMTs on it, but hey, we can get there, you know, quickly. We can at least begin the process.
And EMTs being different than paramedics.
They're at a lower level of training, and then the paramedics are right on the heels of the EMTs. Most of our rigs today have at least one paramedic on board. You have to look quite a ways to find a unit in Orange County Fire that does not have at least one paramedic on board.
And what's interesting, if you ever go to the Orange County Fire Authority website, ocfa.org, the active incidents are there, and I would say 90% are medical emergencies.
Yes, many of them are, yes.
Let me ask you, as far as what a paramedic, you know, we don't have time to go through the whole thing, but what are their limitations as far as a paramedic goes? Can they make a determination and a diagnosis on their own? Do they, like the old emergency show, where they have to call in their partner hospital and get permission to do certain things?
Well, actually, they're licensed through the county.
Okay.
And the county, Orange County EMS, sets forth a set of protocols for them to follow. So if a patient's complaining of chest pain, for example, patient complaining of chest pain, then they have a list of things that they can do.
Okay.
And if the patient isn't improving or deteriorating, whatever the situation may be, then they would call a hospital and ask for guidance on what to do. So very similar to the show.
They can send the vitals in.
So they're talking to what they call a mobile intensive care nurse. So it's an MICN, a mobile intensive care nurse. And they run down the patient's vital signs, and then she can either make a determination of what they need to do, or she will talk to the physician at the hospital to give them orders to provide care for the patient, so that patient can be stabilized before they get to the hospital.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So the model from the TV show hasn't changed a whole lot.
Yeah.
A lot of that is still going on.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And of course, back then, they did have what they call technical help with the show to kind of say, yeah, this is how it's done. And, and it's kind of amazing when you think about it, how far back that goes. But as I said, for the average person, that's where they first learned about it. I'm sure the people on the East Coast were going, what? What's this?
Yeah.
When are we getting this? But it's really a fantastic program. Now, all paramedics are also firefighters, am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So they have cross training, and if they're needed for that side of it, they're going to go in and do what needs to be done.
Absolutely. We are the fire authority, but we, you know, the large majority of our calls are medically based. So when you see the fire engine or the fire truck coming down your street, don't think of it just as a fire engine or a fire truck. It's also an emergency medical unit of sorts.
Definitely. Fantastic. Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all the stuff you brought in today, both the photos and also the great video you guys provided us for. And if anybody ever wants to see the show Emergency, I'm sure you can find it all over the place.
Absolutely.
It was actually a really good show.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah. He still watches.
I still watch it
every night.
I loved it too.
All right, good to see you folks. And you had an open house recently. Any other open houses coming up?
We're going to be having an open house on May 20th at the Orange County Fire Authority headquarters. Normally we have this open house during the summer season.
Right.
We've moved it during the winter because during the summer season we've discovered that because of the brush fires and the staffing issues, it's a little bit easier for us to handle it in May.
Okay.
So we're going to have it separate from the fire station open houses. So May 20th at the headquarters, we're going to have all the things we've always had there before, demonstrations of our equipment, of lots of great fun for the kids, lots of great fun for the adults. We'll have fire engine rides for people, and it's going to be fun for everyone.
You get fire hats?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Thousands of them.
Sounds good. Good to see you folks again, and we'll be right back. All right. Yeah.